Interviewed Joseph Mifsud on February 10th, 2017. In that interview, Mr. Mifsud lied. You point this out on page 193, volume 1. Mifsud denied. Mifsud also falsely stated. In addition, Mifsud omitted. 3 times he lied to the FBI, yet you didn't charge him with the crime.
Excuse me, did you say one? I'm sorry, did you say 193?
Volume 1, 193. He lied 3 times. You pointed out in the report. Why didn't you charge him with the crime?
I can't get into internal deliberations with regard who would or would not be
charged a lot of other people for making false statements. Let's remember this. Let's remember this. In 20...
Jordan here, Republican, is onto something. Don't just accept just because he's a Republican that he's lying or he's being deceptive or whatever. What he's saying here is right. Mainstream media completely ignore this. He's showing problems in the Mueller report. He's showing contradictions in that report. Things that don't quite make sense in that report, especially along the lines of Misfud. You indicted everyone else. You charge all of these other people with a crime for the most modest of lies. Why not Misfud? Also, in your report, you had Misfud as if he was a Russian asset. And fact of the matter is, for the entirety of the Russiagate narrative to work, Misfud has to be a Russian asset. Guess what? Misfud is not a Russian asset. Misfud has been working with our intelligence services. And also, Misfud is talking. Durham, who's looking into the origins of the Russiagate case, is guiding a deposition from Misfud, and apparently the Senate also has it. Russiagate has just completely fallen apart, especially if Misfud tells in that deposition that he was pushed and sent by either the CIA, the FBI, or any kind of intelligence services of the United States. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please like, share, subscribe. The channel is growing, and I appreciate you guys for allowing me to do what I do. I'm going to be on By Any Means Necessary at 3 p.m. So this video is going to have to be shorter than it would probably otherwise be. However, I take it as a personal challenge to get through it succinctly in a way that explains where I'm coming from on this and explains why this is somewhat of a big deal. John Solomon for The Hill has been doing amazing work covering the Russiagate story, and mainstream media, because of the narrative that they've been going with for the last 3 years of Trump and Russia, and not necessarily want to deal with the fact that that narrative was likely untrue, ignores all of this. Jim Jordan taking Mueller to task here should be a big story, because what he's saying here is right. Let's let him finish.
2016, the FBI did something they probably haven't done before. They spied on 2 American citizens associated with a presidential campaign, George Papadopoulos and Carter Page. With Carter Page, they went to the FISA court. They used the now famous dossier as part of the reason they were able to get the warrant and spy on Carter Page for a better part of a year.
And by the way, Jordan didn't add this. Jordan wasn't watching my show. He should be watching my show, especially on this content. They knew that Steele had a political motive in getting that information out into the public, because there were depositions on Steele, and that there were letters sent saying this guy's trying to get this information out into the American population before the election. Why? The only reason you would try to get the Steele dossier information out before the election is because you wanted to tarnish Trump. Foreign British asset. That didn't matter though. Russia. Let's keep going.
With Mr. Papadopoulos, they didn't go to the court. They used human sources. All kinds of, from about the moment Papadopoulos joins the Trump campaign, you got all these people all around the world starting to swirl around him. Names like Halper, Downer, Mifsud, Thompson, meeting in Rome, London, all kinds of places. The FBI even sent a lady posing as somebody else, went by the name Azra Turk, even dispatched her to London to spy on Mr. Papadopoulos. In one of these meetings, Mr. Papadopoulos is talking to a foreign diplomat, and he tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. That diplomat then contacts the FBI, and the FBI opens an investigation based on that fact. You point this out on page 1 of the report. July 31st, 2016, they open the investigation based on that piece of information. Diplomat tells Papadopoulos, Russians have dirt, Papadopoulos tells the diplomat, Russians have dirt on Clinton. Diplomat tells the FBI. What I'm wondering is, who told Papadopoulos? How'd he?
Right there, Joe Misfud. Papadopoulos got the information that there was going to be dirt on Hillary from the Russians from Joe Misfud. The reason why Jordan is taking Mueller to task on this is because you're acting as if Misfud was a foreign asset. Misfud wasn't a foreign asset. The entirety of your report, to some degree, especially in attacking Papadopoulos, is based on this notion that Papadopoulos was given information about dirt on Clinton from the Russians. The link between that is Misfud. He got the information from Misfud. The problem here is that Misfud was a U.S. intelligence asset. Let's see if Jordan goes here.
You find out.
I can't get into the evidentiary
Yes, you can, because you wrote about it. You gave us the answer. Page 192 of the report, you tell us who told him. Joseph Mifsud.
Misfud. If Joseph Mifsud is not a Russian asset, this falls apart. Understand what I mean? This is an extraordinary big deal. Papadopoulos works with the Trump campaign. When Papadopoulos starts working with the Trump campaign, Papadopoulos is met by Joe Misfud. Joe Misfud supposedly has Vladimir Putin's niece. It wasn't Vladimir Putin's niece. And supposedly had the ability to get information that can hurt Clinton. Papadopoulos tells someone about this. That person goes and tells a U.S. diplomat. That diplomat tells the FBI. The question becomes, who told Papadopoulos about the information that hurt the Russians? And if Joe Misfud was not a Russian asset, if Joe Misfud was sent by intelligence services, just like Halper, just like the honeypot, all of these people swirling around Papadopoulos, then it comes across as if they were trying to entrap Papadopoulos. Follow the thread. Somebody contacts Papadopoulos, said we got information that hurt Clinton from the Russians. Then the FBI sends somebody and says, hey, are you getting information from the Russians? Are you getting information from the Russians? Then a honeypot says, are you working with the Russians? Are you working with the Russians? It's a little bit weird that all of these people started going to Papadopoulos, asking him if he was working with the Russians at the exact same time that it seems like a U.S. intelligence asset lied to him saying, I'm from Russia. I'm from Russia. Misfud went on the lam. Misfud can be found. However, a contact for Misfud comes out in November and tells BuzzFeed that Misfud is open to testifying to the Senate. Right here. A lawyer closely associated with Joseph Mifsud claims that the Maltese professor who allegedly delivered word of Hillary Clinton's stolen emails to Donald Trump's campaign is willing to testify before the U.S. Senate. This goes further. Right here. This is what came out today. I can report absolutely that, and this is now Solomon. This is Solomon. Solomon has been reporting this from the Hill, has been doing amazing work. Mainstream reporter. I can report absolutely that Durham investigators have now obtained an audio tape deposition of Joseph Mifsud where he describes his work, why he targeted Papadopoulos, who directed him to do that, what directions he was given, and why he set the entire process of introducing Papadopoulos to Russia in motion in March of 2016, which is really the flashpoint, the starting point of the whole Russia collusion narrative. I can also confirm that the Senate Judiciary Committee has obtained the same deposition, he said. If Misfud comes out, and if Misfud say, look, I was sent to lie to Papadopoulos, I was sent to tell him this, and it wasn't by the Russians, this entirely falls apart. This has been falling apart from the beginning, but at this point, the Russiagators are full-blown out in the woods conspiracy theories. If they are still going with this notion that Trump was working with the Russians when you find out that none of these people were Russians, but intelligence. Not to mention that's a whole new can of worms. Earlier, right here, while his whereabouts is still unknown, a lawyer who claims to be representing Misfud began recently giving interviews. Swiss lawyer Stephen Rowe, who is reported to have been involved with handling Misfud's legal affairs for many years, volunteered to the news media that Misfud had told him he was working for the FBI when he reached out to Papadopoulos. It was while in London in March 2016 that Misfud introduced Papadopoulos to a woman pretending to be Vladimir Putin's niece, as he attempted to convince the young man that he had very real connections with the powerful Russian government officials who wished to help Trump win the election. This stinks. Media don't touch it, but this stinks. They are trying to confirm, back up, and solidify their narrative. But the problem here is that the moment it's not in contest that Papadopoulos was met with Halper. It's not in contest that they sent honeypots in order to deal with Papadopoulos to try to get him to say, yes, we'll work with the Russians. The question is Misfud. And at this point, I don't even think it's in question that Misfud is worked with intelligence, because at this point, it is clear as a flat fact that Misfud has links to our U.S. intelligence. It would be very weird for him to be a Russian asset and simultaneously working as U.S. intelligence. So the situation that we have is now Misfud is talking. And in the past, Misfud has said, or at the very least, a lawyer representing Misfud or saying that they were representing Misfud has said Misfud was doing this at the behest of the FBI. This looks like entrapment. We will find out. I was one of those people who said it is vitally important that a conspiracy theory that tried to take down the presidency of the United States, regardless of who that president is, gets investigated. It is vitally important to know the origins of a massive conspiracy theory that has enraptured the public for the last 3 years. And to some degree, there's still some conspiracy theorists that are still digging this ditch. Nevertheless, an investigation has been going on trying to find the origins of it. And for all intents and purposes, every incentive in this is for Trump to figure out how this started, because after all, this was an attempt to take off his head. And if you can find out that this started in ways that weren't necessarily on the up and up, that there was a political motivation to it, it also puts a knife in this notion of impeachment, because how can you impeach somebody for something that was politically motivated in the way they said it was politically motivated from the beginning? I hope that makes sense. Russiagate is falling apart. And Solomon, who's been doing amazing work, Joe Mifsud, the Maltese professor, who apparently nobody could find, now wants to testify. And if he says I was working for anything other than Russia, this falls apart. It has already been falling apart. But the last leg of it just gets obliterated. And by the way, if that last leg goes, oh my God. Because then you get into this notion of, well, wait a minute. If this was fake, if this was conspiracy theory, and if you were sending all of these intelligence assets around a president, should the intelligence services be trying to entrap a presidential campaign in this way? And what does it mean if the intelligence services are doing that? And does there need to be an investigation of the intelligence services themselves? Like, all hell breaks loose. But don't you want to know what's true more than, to try to preserve the intelligence services? I think it's an extraordinary big deal that the intelligence services took it upon themselves to try to entrap and take down the president of the United States. And even if that president is as gross as Donald Trump, that's something that we should know, and that's something we should be definitely against. Any notion of a democratic order goes out the window if you have intelligence services that willy-nilly come up with reasons to try to entrap, or in this kind of faux bureaucratic way, to remove a president. I'll leave it here. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks.